Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku discovered a hidden Kryptonian artifact. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sun was setting over Muzutafu, casting long, bruised shadows across the city. The light was a deep, burning orange, the color of a dying ember, and it reflected off the glassy surface of the Takoba River. For most, this was magic hour, the time when the city looked its best. For Izuku Midoriya, it was just another reminder that the day was over, and once again, he had accomplished nothing. He sat on the concrete embankment overlooking the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, his knees pulled up to his chest, his yellow backpack sitting sadly beside him. The fabric of his middle school uniform felt stiff and uncomfortable, scratching against skin that felt too sensitive to the world around it. It had been 3 weeks. 3 weeks since the sludge villain incident. 3 weeks since Katsuki Bakugo had been suffocated while heroes watched. 3 weeks since All Might, the symbol of peace, had deflated in a burst of steam and told Izuku the truth that shattered his world. I cannot simply say you can become a hero even without power. The words didn't hurt as much as they used to. Now, they just felt like a dull weight, a heavy stone he had swallowed and couldn't digest. The memory of the rooftop was vivid, the wind, the skeletal form of his idol, the absolute finality of the rejection. It was the no to end all no's. Izuku looked down at the beach. It wasn't really a beach anymore. It was a graveyard of things people didn't want. Tires, broken electronics, rotting furniture, scraps of metal, and mountains of plastic drift were piled high, obscuring the sand and blocking the view of the horizon. It was illegal dumping on a massive scale. A festering wound on the coastline that nobody bothered to heal because it was too much work. Useless, Izuku whispered, the word tasting like ash. He wasn't sure if he was talking about the trash or himself. He stood up, dusting off his pants. He picked up his backpack, hearing the faint crinkle of hero analysis for the future number 13 inside. The notebook was scorched, the edges curled and blackened from Bakugo's explosion, but he hadn't thrown it away. He couldn't. It was a habit, a compulsion. Even if he couldn't be a hero, he couldn't stop analyzing them. It was the only language he knew how to speak. He walked down the concrete stairs, his red sneakers scuffing against the grit. The smell hit him first, a mixture of brine, rust, and wet rot. It was pungent, but strangely grounding. He wasn't here to train for UA. Not anymore. The hero course was a pipe dream, a delusion he had entertained for too long. But he had applied to the General Education Department, and even the support course, just in case. But he was here because he needed to do something. If he sat in his room, staring at his All Might posters, he would drown in his own depression. If he stayed at the dinner table, watching his mother tiptoe around him with teary eyes, apologizing for giving birth to a defect, he would scream. So he came here. To the garbage dump. If I clean it, he muttered to himself, grabbing a rusted piece of rebar and using it to pry a half-buried microwave out of the sand, then at least the view will be nice. It was a small goal. A pathetic goal. But it was his, he grunted, his thin arms straining. The microwave was heavy, filled with wet sand. His muscles burned. He was weak. He knew that. He was a skinny, 14-year-old boy with no quirk factor, no special genetics. Just a surplus of anxiety and a deficit of hope. With a wet schluck sound, the microwave came free. Izuku stumbled back, gasping for air, sweat stinging his eyes. He dragged it a few meters to a designated pile near the road where the municipal trucks might actually pick it up. He wiped his forehead with his sleeve. One piece of trash down. Only about 4 million to go. He worked until the sun dipped below the horizon and the streetlights flickered on, casting long, eerie shadows across the mounds of junk. The beach looked like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. He was about to call it a night when he saw it. Deep in the center of the trash heap, near the water's edge, was a towering accumulation of debris that looked like a jagged mountain. At the base of it, half buried in the sand, was the corner of something massive. It looked like an industrial refrigerator, or maybe a safe. That's going to rust and leak chemicals into the water, Izuku mumbled. He adjusted his grip on his makeshift pry bar. Just one more. Then I go home. He navigated the maze of trash, climbing over a rotting sofa and squeezing between two crushed cars. He reached the base of the trash mountain. The object was indeed a refrigerator, an old, double-door industrial model, likely from a restaurant that went under. Izuku dug his heels into the sand. He jammed the rebar under the corner of the fridge. 1, 2, heave! He pulled back. The fridge didn't budge. It was incredibly heavy, likely packed with other trash or sand. Come on, he gritted his teeth. Move. He readjusted his grip. He channeled all his frustration, all the anger at Bakugo, all the sorrow from All Might, into his arms. He wasn't pushing a fridge. He was pushing against the world that told him to stay down. The fridge shifted. It tilted, but the ground beneath Izuku's feet did not hold. The sand here was loose, undermined by the tides and the weight of the garbage. As the fridge tipped, the foundation gave way. Wah! The ground collapsed. It wasn't a slide, it was a sinkhole. Izuku fell. He tumbled into darkness, sand rushing into his mouth and eyes. He flailed blindly, his hands scraping against jagged metal and concrete. He hit a slope and rolled, the world spinning in a chaotic blur of pain and darkness. He landed hard on his back, the wind knocked out of him. Cough. Hack. Izuku curled into a ball, wheezing, trying to force air back into his lungs. His ribs ached. His left arm stung where something sharp had grazed it. Oh wow! He groaned, his voice echoing strangely. Echoing. Izuku froze. He opened his eyes. He wasn't buried. He was in a pocket. He sat up slowly, brushing sand off his face. It was dark, but not pitch black. Shafts of moonlight filtered down through the gaps in the trash mountain high above, creating pillars of pale light in the dusty air. He was in a cavern. It looked like an old drainage outflow or a maintenance tunnel that had been sealed off and buried decades ago. The trash had piled on top of it, creating a roof, but the structure itself had held. Hello? He whispered. The echo came back sharp and metallic. Hello, hello. He fumbled in his pocket for his phone. Cracked screen, but it worked. He turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom. Concrete walls. Damp sand floor. Rusted pipes running along the ceiling. It was creepy, the kind of place villains would hide bodies. Izuku shivered. Okay. Need to climb out. Just find a foothold in. His light swept across the far wall of the chamber. He stopped. There, protruding from the sand like a spear thrown by a god, was an object that didn't belong. It wasn't rusted. It wasn't covered in barnacles or grime. It wasn't made of plastic or cheap steel. It was a crystal. Or at least, it looked like one. It was about the size of a rugby ball, shaped like an elongated diamond with complex, geometric facets. It was a deep, translucent gray, but deep within its core, a faint, rhythmic blue light pulsed like a heartbeat. Around the crystal were metallic housings, silver, but a silver that looked liquid, seamless, with no rivets or weld lines. Izuku stood up, mesmerized. His fear momentarily forgotten, replaced by the insatiable curiosity that had filled 13 notebooks. What is that? He stepped closer, his sneakers crunching on the sand. The object was humming. A low, sub-bass frequency that he felt in his teeth more than he heard with his ears. Was it a support item? A piece of villain tech? He shone his light on the sand around it. The impact crater was old. This thing hadn't fallen here recently. It had been here for a long time, maybe years, and the trash had simply been piled on top of it. It looks advanced, Izuku muttered, his analytical murmuring kicking in. No visible power source. The material has a high refractive index. It's glowing, which implies an internal energy reaction, but there's no heat signature that I can feel from here. He reached out a trembling hand. Don't touch it, Midoriya. That's how people die in horror movies. But the pull was undeniable. It felt important. It felt like the universe was holding its breath. He extended his index finger and brushed the surface of the crystal. It was cold. Ice cold. Seared. Ah. Izuku yanked his hand back. A sharp, static shock had jumped from the device to his finger. He looked at his hand. A tiny bead of blood welled up on his fingertip. It had pricked him. It took a sample? Before he could process that thought, the hum grew louder. The blue light in the core of the crystal flared, illuminating the dark cavern with a blinding radiance. Izuku shielded his eyes, stumbling back. "I'm sorry! I didn't mean to." The light coalesced. It didn't just shine, it took shape. Beams of hard light projected upward, intersecting and weaving together with impossible speed. In seconds, a figure stood before him. It was a hologram, translucent and blue, flickering slightly at the edges. It was a man. He was tall, wearing robes that looked like a mix of ancient armor and futuristic fabric. On his chest was a symbol, a diamond shape containing an S-like curve. He had a noble face, a strong jaw, and eyes that seemed to look through Izuku rather than at him. The hologram spoke. "Rauka. Zad you are. Kryptonta." The voice was deep, resonant, and spoke a language that sounded like grinding stones and singing glass. Izuku stared, his mouth open. I don't understand." The hologram paused. It seemed to tilt its head. The eyes scanned Izuku, beams of light sweeping over his body from head to toe. "Language assimilation in progress," the voice said, suddenly shifting to a robotic, monotone Japanese. "Scanning local dialect. Neural pattern recognized. Adjusting." The figure shimmered, becoming sharper. The man's face softened, becoming less like a statue and more like a person. "Greetings," the hologram said, the Japanese perfect, though the accent was archaic. "I am the custodial consciousness of the House of L. I am Jor-El." Izuku's back hit the concrete wall. He was hyperventilating. "A hologram? Is this a quirk? Is someone doing this?" "I am not a quirk," the hologram replied. It sounded confused by the term. "I am an artificial intelligence encoded into this education drone. My purpose is to safeguard the knowledge of Krypton and to locate a suitable vessel for the Codex." "Krypton?" Izuku squeaked. "Is that a hero agency?" The hologram's expression turned sorrowful. Krypton was a world. A planet, orbiting the red star Rao, many light years from this location. "It is gone." Izuku blinked. "Aliens?" He looked around for a camera crew. This had to be a prank. But the technology, the clarity of the hologram, the seamless levitation of the crystal which was now hovering a few feet off the ground, this was beyond anything he had seen from Hatsum Industries or Island. "You're from space?" Izuku whispered. "My creators were," Jor-El said. "I am merely a memory. A ghost in the machine." The hologram stepped forward, or rather, floated forward. "You activated the distress beacon. You provided the genetic key." "I just touched it," Izuku said, holding up his bleeding finger. "The drone requires biological confirmation to activate. It has analyzed your genetic structure." Jor-El made a gesture, and a floating screen of light appeared between them. It showed a double helix, DNA. "Species, human," Jor-El recited. "Carbon-based. Bipedal. However." The hologram frowned. "There is a distinct anomaly in your population. My sensors detect that 80% of your species possesses a metagene variant. A biological alteration that allows for manipulation of physics or biological mutation." "Quirks," Izuku said automatically. "We call them quirks." "Quirks," Jor-El tested the word. "An evolutionary leap. Chaotic. Unstable." He looked at Izuku. "But you do not possess this gene. You are empty." Izuku flinched. Even an alien AI could see it. "Yeah. I know. I'm quirkless. I'm normal. I'm sorry if I wasted your time." He turned to the trash pile he had fallen through, gauging if he could climb out. "I'll just go." "Wait," Jor-El commanded. The voice had authority. It stopped Izuku in his tracks. "I did not say you were defective," Jor-El said. "I said you were empty. A vessel cannot be filled if it is already full." Izuku turned back. "What?" Jor-El gestured to the DNA chart again. "This quirk factor acts as a genetic lock. It rewrites the body to perform one specific function. Fire generation. Gigantism. Telepathy. It occupies the potential of the cells." The hologram walked closer, towering over the boy. "But your cells are blank. They are a pristine canvas. And more importantly, your bone density and muscle fiber density are slightly higher than the average for your size. You have been engaging in primitive labor?" I I've been cleaning the beach, Izuku said. It has prepared you, Jor-El said. The drone was sent to find a compatible genetic match to preserve the legacy of my people. A Kryptonian could not survive here without aid, and there are no Kryptonians left. So, the protocol shifts to uplift. Uplift? We cannot bring Krypton back, Jor-El said, his voice heavy with the grief of a dead civilization. But we can give its power to a successor. A native of this world who can carry the torch. The crystal pulsed violently. The blue light turned white, then gold. Your physiology is compatible with the photonucleic effect, Jor-El stated. Your cells are capable of metabolizing solar radiation from your yellow star. But they lack the catalyst to begin the process. This drone contains that catalyst. A retroviral genetic overwrite. Izuku took a step back, his heart hammering against his ribs. You're talking about changing my DNA? I am talking about evolution, Jor-El said. I am offering you the strength to move mountains, the speed to race the wind, the durability of steel, the power to protect your world in a way my people failed to protect ours. Izuku went silent. Strength, speed, durability. It sounded like All Might. Why? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. Why me? I'm nobody. I'm just a kid who fell in a hole. Jor-El looked at him. For a moment, the AI looked incredibly human. Because you were the one who found it, Jor-El said simply. And because my sensors indicate your cortical stress levels are dangerously high, yet you continue to perform labor for the benefit of your environment. You are suffering, yet you serve. The hologram knelt, bringing his face level with Izuku's. On my world, the symbol of my house meant hope. You are running on empty, young one. Let me give you the fuel to keep going. Izuku looked at his hands. They were calloused, dirty, and shaking. He thought of the bullying. He thought of the pity. He thought of the sludge villain, and how useless he had felt clawing at that slime. He wanted to be a hero. More than anything in the universe, he wanted to save people with a smile. Will it? Izuku swallowed. Will it hurt? The rewriting of your biological structure will be excruciating, Jor-El said honestly. It will feel as though you are burning from the inside out. Your senses will be dialed up to agonizing levels until you learn to control them. It is a burden, not a gift. It is a responsibility. Izuku closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. He imagined All Might's face. You can become a hero. If the world wouldn't give him a quirk, maybe the stars would. Do it, Izuku whispered. Jor-El nodded solemnly. Step forward, Kal-El. Forgive me. Step forward, native. Izuku stepped toward the crystal. Place your hand upon the sunstone. Izuku reached out. He placed his palm flat against the faceted surface. It wasn't cold anymore. It was hot. Searing hot. Calibration complete, Jor-El's voice boomed, echoing through the cavern. Beginning solar uplift protocol. Injecting Kryptonian codex elements. Brace yourself. The crystal exploded with light. It wasn't a beam, it was a flood. Energy, pure and golden, surged up Izuku's arm. He screamed. It felt like someone had injected liquid magma into his veins. He could feel it moving, racing up his shoulder, into his chest, flooding his heart. His heart hammered thump-thump, thump-thump, so hard he thought it would crack his ribs. He tried to pull away, but he was stuck. The energy arcana held him fast. Fire. Every cell in his body was being torn apart and stitched back together with threads of fire. His vision went white. He could hear his own blood rushing like a waterfall. He could hear the electricity humming in the wires of the city miles away. He could hear the heartbeat of a seagull sleeping on the trash pile above him. Focus! Jor-El's voice cut through the pain. Do not fight it. Accept it. Let the light in. Izuku threw his head back, his mouth open in a silent scream as the air left his lungs. His green veins glowed gold beneath his skin. He felt heavy. He felt light. He felt like he was expanding, growing larger than the cave, larger than the beach, larger than the earth. And then, the crystal shattered. It turned into fine dust, swirling into a vortex that slammed into Izuku's chest, absorbing directly into his skin. The light died. The cave plunged back into darkness. Izuku stood there for a second, swaying. Smoke rose from his school uniform. His skin felt feverish. He croaked. He took one step and fell face first into the sand. As consciousness faded, the last thing he heard was the calm, computerized voice of Jor-El, sounding not from a hologram, but from inside his own mind. Integration successful. Welcome to the House of El, Izuku Midoriya. Sleep now. Tomorrow, you will see the world for the first time. Darkness took him. The next morning, the first thing Izuku noticed was the sound. Thump thump. Thump thump. Thump thump. It was loud. A rhythmic, pounding drumbeat. He groaned and rolled over, burying his face in his pillow. Wait. Pillow? He shot up in bed. He was in his room. His All Might posters stared back at him. How did I? He looked down at himself. He was wearing his pajamas. He was clean. Did I dream it? He whispered, then he heard it again. Thump thump. He looked around. Mom? No, it wasn't coming from the kitchen. It was coming from next door? No, further. He focused on the sound. He could hear, talking. I told you to buy the milk. A woman's voice screeched. I forgot, okay? A man replied. Izuku clutched his head. That was the Satos, 3 apartments down. He shouldn't be able to hear them. He squeezed his eyes shut. The light coming through his curtains felt like lasers. It burned his retinas. He could see the dust motes dancing in the air, not just see them, but see the microscopic jagged edges of the skin cells that composed them. Too loud, he whimpered. Too bright. He scrambled out of bed, but he moved too fast. Boom! He slammed into his bedroom door. The door didn't just rattle, the wood splintered, and the hinges shrieked as the metal tore. The door flew off its frame and clattered into the hallway. Izuku stood frozen, his hands still outstretched. He looked at the shattered door frame. He looked at his hand. There wasn't a scratch on him. Izuku? His mother's voice came from the kitchen, panicked. She came running around the corner, holding a spatula. She saw the door lying in the hallway. She saw her son, standing in the wreckage, shaking. Oh my goodness! What happened? Are you hurt? She rushed to him, grabbing his arms. Her touch felt like a sledgehammer. Her skin was so rough. He could feel the pulse in her fingertips like a jackhammer. Mom! Izuku gasped, pulling away gently. I'm okay. I just tripped. Tripped? Inko Midoriya looked at the heavy wooden door, torn from the wall. Izuku, did you do this? Izuku looked at her. He could see the worry lines on her face with terrifying clarity. He could hear her heartbeat speeding up. Thump thump thump. He looked at his hand again. He clenched his fist. The air crunched inside his grip. The memory of the cave rushed back. The hologram. The pain. The gold light. Your physiology is compatible. He wasn't quirkless anymore. He looked at his mother, tears welling in his eyes, not from sadness, but from sensory overload. Mom, he whispered, his voice trembling. I think my quirk finally came in. 10 months later, the morning of the UA entrance exam was crisp and clear. The sky was a piercing blue, devoid of clouds. Izuku stood at the entrance of the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It was gone. The trash was gone. The beach was pristine. White sand stretched for miles, sparkling in the sunlight. The water was clear blue. The only thing remaining was the concrete embankment where he used to sit and cry. He took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. He wore his black middle school uniform, but underneath, his body was different. He wasn't the scrawny kid anymore. He wasn't a bodybuilder like All Might, but he was dense. His muscles were like coiled steel cables under his skin. He stood with a posture that was straighter, taller. He adjusted his glasses. They were special prescription lenses Jor-El had helped him design, thick lead glass to help dampen the X-ray vision that sometimes flickered on when he lost focus. You are ready, a voice said in his ear. Izuku tapped the small, silver earpiece he wore. It was the only piece of the drone that remained, fashioned into a comms link. I'm nervous, Jor-El, Izuku murmured. What if I lose control? What if I hurt someone? You have spent 10 months meditating in the stratosphere, the AI replied calmly. You have learned to hold a butterfly without crushing its wings. You have learned to filter the cries of the city into white noise. You are in control. Izuku looked at his hand. He remembered the door. He remembered the time he accidentally sneezed and blew a hole through a stack of tires. He remembered the night he discovered he could float, and spent 3 hours stuck on the ceiling of his bedroom until he figured out how to come down. It had been hell. But it had been worth it. Aizawa-sensei won't like me, Izuku said, starting to walk toward the train station. He hates unpredictable power. Then show him discipline, Jor-El advised. Do not reveal the flight. Do not use the heat vision. Stick to the physical enhancements. Strength. Speed. Durability. Pass it off as a superpower quirk. Solar battery, Izuku corrected. That's what we put on the registry. A crude name, the AI sniffed. But sufficient. Izuku walked through the streets. People bustled around him. He could hear all of them. He could hear the arguments, the laughter, the secrets. He could hear a siren wailing 3 districts over. He could hear a plane cruising at 30,000 feet. He took a breath and built the wall in his mind. Brick by brick. He dialed the volume down. The world became quiet. He reached the UA gates. The massive glass structure of the school loomed over him. He saw Katsuki Bakugo walking ahead, hands in his pockets, scowling at the world. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't hide. Bakugo turned, sensing him. The explosive boy narrowed his eyes. Deku. Kaken, Izuku nodded. You're not supposed to be here, Bakugo growled. I told you to take a swan dive. Izuku stopped. He looked at Bakugo. Really looked at him. With his enhanced vision, he could see the micro-tremors in Bakugo's hands, the result of constant recoil. He could see the insecurity behind the arrogance. He didn't feel fear. He felt pity. I'm applying Kaken, Izuku said softly. I'm going to be a hero. Bakugo scoffed, sparks popping in his palms. With no quirk? You're gonna die. Izuku smiled. It was a small, secret smile. I guess we'll see. He walked past Bakugo. He walked toward the doors. As he crossed the threshold, he looked up at the sun. He could feel it feeding him, a constant, warm hum in his blood. He felt infinite. I am not just Izuku Midoriya anymore, he thought. I am the last son of a dead world. And I am going to save this one. He stepped into the darkness of the auditorium, shining like a star. The world was not designed for a god. It was designed for men. And to Izuku Midoriya, waking up on the morning after the incident at Dagoba Beach, the world felt less like a home and more like a trap made of tissue paper and glass. He was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a piece of toast. To anyone else, it was just a slice of burnt bread. To Izuku, it was a topographic map of carbonized wheat. He could see the microscopic fissures in the crust. He could smell the yeast, the slightly acrid scent of the toaster's heating element, and the distinct chemical tang of the dish soap his mother had used to wash the plate 3 days ago. Izuku? He flinched. The word didn't just enter his ears, it slammed into his brain. The K sound at the end of his name cracked like a whip. I'm okay, Mom, he said. His voice sounded strange to him, deeper, vibrating in his chest like a cello string. He had to whisper to keep the volume down. If he spoke normally, he felt the table rattle. Inko Midoriya hovered by the stove, her hands wringing together. She looked exhausted. She hadn't slept well. Izuku knew this because he had heard her heartbeat all night long. Thump thump. Thump thump. He had heard her shifting in her sheets. He had heard her sigh at 3 a.m. He had heard the saline drip of a tear hitting her pillow. Are you sure you don't want to stay home? Inko asked, her voice trembling with that unique frequency of maternal worry. After the door, she glanced at the hallway. The door to Izuku's room was currently propped up against the wall, the hinges sheared off as if by a hydraulic press. I have to go, Izuku said, picking up the toast. He tried to be gentle. He treated the bread like it was an explosive. Grip. Lift. Don't crush. He bit into it. The crunch was deafening, like a rock slide inside his skull. He suppressed a wince. I need to go to the doctor, he said, chewing slowly. We need to register the quirk. And I need to figure out how to turn it off. Inko's face brightened, a fragile smile breaking through her anxiety. A quirk. Oh, Izuku. I still can't believe it. A late bloomer. My baby really is a late bloomer. She rushed over and hugged him. Izuku froze. The embrace was torture. Not because he didn't love her. He loved her more than anything, but because he could feel everything. He felt the friction of her apron against his uniform. He felt the heat radiating from her skin like a furnace. He could hear the blood rushing through her carotid artery. He gently, so gently, patted her back. "It's okay, Mom," he lied. "It's a good thing." But as he walked out of the apartment complex 10 minutes later, gripping the strap of his backpack until the nylon creaked, Izuku didn't feel good. He felt like a monster wearing a human suit. The diagnosis. The waiting room of the Muzurifu General Hospital was a cacophony of suffering. Izuku sat in the plastic chair, eyes squeezed shut behind his hands. He couldn't block it out. A child was crying 3 rooms away. He had a scraped knee. Izuku could hear the fabric of the bandage being unwrapped. An elderly man was coughing in the lobby. Izuku could hear the fluid in his lungs rattling. The fluorescent lights above buzzed with a 60s cycle hum that drilled into his molars. Focus, he told himself. Focus on the silence. Find the silence. Midoriya Izuku? He stood up. Too fast. The air displaced around him with a whoosh that scattered the papers on the nurse's clipboard. "Sorry," he gasped. He walked toward the examination room, moving with the stiff, deliberate gait of a marionette. Dr. Tsubasa was there, the same doctor who had crushed his dreams 10 years ago. The man looked older, his mustache grayer, his goggles thicker. He looked at Izuku's file, then at the boy. "Well now," the doctor grunted. "This is a surprise. Usually, when people come back to me after a decade claiming a quirk awakened, they're hallucinating or on trigger drugs. But your mother says you tore a solid oak door off its hinges?" "Yes, sir," Izuku whispered. "Sit. Let's do the standard tests. X-rays first." The process was agonizing. The lead apron felt like tissue paper. When the X-ray machine buzzed, Izuku felt a strange tickle in his skin, like his cells were drinking the radiation. They moved to physical tests. "Squeeze this dynamometer," the doctor said. Izuku held the device. He tried to squeeze just a little. Just a fraction. Crack. The metal handle crumpled. The dial spun all the way around, snapped off, and pinged against the far wall. Springs and gears rained onto the linoleum. Dr. Tsubasa stared at the wreckage in Izuku's hand. He stared at Izuku. "That was rated for 400 kilograms, the doctor said flatly. "I'm sorry," Izuku said, terrified. "I'll pay for it." "Never mind that," the doctor muttered, scribbling furiously on his chart. "Let's look at the X-rays." They went back to the office. The doctor slapped the film onto the light board. "Here's the problem, Midoriya," Dr. Tsubasa said, tapping the film. "Or rather, the mystery." Izuku looked. He saw the bones of his foot. "You have 2 joints in your pinky toe," the doctor said. Izuku blinked. I know. That's why you said I was quirkless." "Exactly," Tsubasa said. "And looking at your genetic markers from the blood test we just ran, you are quirkless. You have no quirk factor. No plus alpha gene. Biologically, you are a baseline human from 300 years ago." "But," Izuku pointed to the crushed dynamometer on the floor. "Yes. But..." The doctor sat back, rubbing his temples. "I've seen mutation quirks. I've seen transformation types. They all leave a genetic footprint. You don't have one. Your muscle density is off the charts. Your skin broke 3 needles before we got a sample. But it doesn't read as a quirk." The doctor leaned in, his voice low. "If I didn't know better, I'd say your body isn't mutating. It's optimizing. It's like you're suddenly operating at 1000% efficiency." "What do I put on the registry?" Izuku asked. "If I'm quirkless, I can't go to UA." Dr. Tsubasa sighed. "Bureaucracy doesn't care about genetics, it cares about results. You have super strength. We'll register it as a mutation-type strength enhancer." "Name?" Izuku thought about the hologram in the cave. "The Sunstone. Solar battery," Izuku said. "Solar battery." Tsubasa wrote it down. "Sounds fancy. Listen to me, kid. Whatever this is, it's volatile. Your body is strong, but the world isn't. Be careful." The Fortress of Solitude. Izuku didn't go home. He couldn't. The apartment was too small, too fragile. He felt like a bull in a china shop, only the bull was nuclear-powered. He went to the beach. He navigated the trash piles, moving deeper into the labyrinth he had spent weeks cleaning. He reached the collapsed sinkhole. He looked around to ensure no one was watching. He jumped. He didn't just fall. He controlled the descent, his leg muscles absorbing the impact with the sand floor of the cavern like high-tension springs. The cave was dark, but to Izuku, it was illuminated in grayscale. He could see infrared heat signatures from the rats scurrying in the corners. "Jor-El?" he called out. He tapped the small silver earpiece he had found in the dust, the only remnant of the crystal that hadn't been absorbed into his body. VZZT. The air in front of him shimmered. The hologram didn't appear from a projector this time. It was projected directly from the earpiece into his optic nerve, an augmented reality overlay. The ghost of the Kryptonian scientist stood before him, blue and flickering. Kal-El. Izuku, the AI corrected itself. Vital signs are elevated. Cortisol levels high. You are in distress. Distress? I'm losing my mind. Izuku paced the small cavern, his hands gripping his hair. I broke a door. I crushed a medical device. I can hear the worms crawling in the dirt, Jor-El. I can't turn it off. Jor-El watched him calmly. The sensory overload is expected. Your senses were evolved for a world under a red sun, where gravity was heavier and the environment harsher. Under this yellow sun, your receptors are flooded. You are drinking from a fire hose. How do I stop it? Izuku pleaded. I can't live like this. I can't be a hero if I'm curled up in a ball screaming because a pin dropped. You must build a dam, Jor-El said. Sit. Izuku sat in the sand, crossing his legs. Close your eyes, the AI instructed. You are visualizing the world as a flood. Do not fight the water. Be the stone. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. It's too loud. Isolate a sound, Jor-El commanded. One sound. The ocean. Izuku tried. He could hear the waves crashing. But behind them, he heard the cars, the people, the wind. Focus, Jor-El's voice was sharp. Your mind is a fortress. You are the gatekeeper. Nothing enters without your permission. Imagine a dial in your mind. A volume knob. A knob, Izuku muttered. He visualized it. A simple, plastic volume dial like on an old stereo. Currently it is at 10, Jor-El said. Turn it to 5. Izuku gritted his teeth. He focused on the mental image. He grabbed the imaginary dial. It felt rusty. Stuck. He pushed. Scree. The noise in his head spiked, a high-pitched whine. I can't. You must, Jor-El said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming stern. Listen to me, Izuku. You possess power that can crack the tectonic plates of this planet. If you sneeze without control, you could level a city block. If you stumble, you could kill those you love. Izuku stopped breathing. The image of his mother, broken, flashed in his mind. You live in a world made of cardboard, Jor-El said. Every person you meet, every building you enter, is made of paper. They are fragile. You are steel. You must always be in control. You can never break. You can never lose your temper. Because if you do, the cardboard breaks. And it does not get put back together. A world of cardboard. The metaphor settled heavy in Izuku's gut. It was terrifying. But it was also clarifying. He wasn't just training to be a hero anymore. He was training to be safe. He visualized the dial again. He thought of his mother's smile. He thought of the fragility of her bones. He grabbed the dial. Turn. The roar of the city dimmed. The buzzing of the flies faded. The thrum of his own blood quieted. Izuku opened his eyes. The cave was silent. He could still hear the ocean, but it was distant, pleasant background noise. He looked at his hands. They weren't shaking. I did it, he whispered. This is level 5, Jor-El said. It is sufficient for daily interaction. But you must practice. You must learn to dial it down to 1 for sleep, and up to 10 only when absolutely necessary. Now. Stand up. We begin physical calibration. The School of Hard Knocks. Aldera Junior High had always been a hostile environment for Izuku, but now it was a minefield. It had been 2 weeks since the awakening. Izuku had managed to maintain his level 5 sensory setting, though it slipped when he was startled. He walked into Class 3A, his head down. Deku! The explosion popped right next to his ear. In the past, Izuku would have flinched, cowered, and stuttered. This time, time seemed to slow down. He saw the explosion expanding in slow motion. He saw the individual sparks of nitroglycerin igniting. He saw the shockwave rippling the air. He felt the heat, but it didn't burn. It felt like a warm breeze. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just turned his head slowly to look at Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo froze. His hand was still smoking near Izuku's face. He was waiting for the whimper. It didn't come. Izuku's eyes were different. Behind the glasses, which he now wore to help filter the light, his green irises seemed deeper, almost luminescent. "Good morning, Kaken," Izuku said calmly. The class went silent. "Ha!" Bakugo's brow twitched. "You ignoring me, you quirkless pebble?" "I'm not ignoring you," Izuku said. He walked past Bakugo to his desk. "I'm just going to my seat." He pulled his chair out. Scree a cake. He miscalculated. He pulled too hard. The metal legs of the chair dug furrows into the wooden floorboards as if the floor was made of butter. Izuku froze. Cardboard. The floor is cardboard. Bakugo stared at the gouges in the floor. He stared at Izuku. Bakugo's voice lost some of its volume, replaced by a sharp edge of suspicion. "What was that?" I've been working out," Izuku stammered, falling back into his persona. "Just nervous energy." He sat down, placing his hands flat on the desk. "Don't press down. Don't grip the pen too hard. Don't breathe too deep." Throughout the day, the struggle was constant. During PE, they played basketball, cardboard ball, cardboard hoop. When the ball was passed to him, Izuku caught it. He tried to cushion the impact, but his reflexes were too fast. His hands clamped shut. Pop! The basketball exploded. Rubber shrapnel flew everywhere. The gym went silent again. "Midoriya!" the PE teacher yelled. "That's the third ball this month." "Sorry." Izuku bowed frantically. Bakugo was watching him from the sidelines, his red eyes narrowing. He wasn't yelling anymore. He was calculating. After school, as Izuku was changing his shoes at the lockers, a hand slammed against the metal next to his head. Clang! Izuku sighed. He didn't jump. He looked at the dent Bakugo had made in the locker. "Talk," Bakugo growled. "You're not quirkless anymore. You're hiding something. Did you buy a trigger? Did you steal something?" Izuku looked at his childhood friend. He could see the skeletal structure of Bakugo's hand. He could see the microfractures in Bakugo's wrist from years of explosions. "I didn't steal anything, Kaken," Izuku said quietly. It appeared recently. The doctor said it's a stockpile mutation. My body is storing energy." "A stockpile?" Bakugo sneered. "Like you're some kind of battery? Useless. Just because you have a little super strength doesn't mean you can stand in my ring, Deku." "I know," Izuku said. And he meant it. He wasn't in Bakugo's ring. He was in a different universe entirely. "Don't get cocky," Bakugo spat, pushing off the wall. "If you apply to UA, I'll crush you. Strength doesn't matter if I blow you to bits." Bakugo walked away. Izuku watched him go. "Blow me to bits?" Izuku looked at his own hand. Yesterday, he had accidentally dropped a kitchen knife. He had tried to catch it but missed. The knife had hit his bare foot. The knife had shattered. His skin hadn't even been scratched. "I don't think you can, Kaken," Izuku thought, a strange, cold realization settling in his chest. "I don't think anything can." The montage, becoming iron. The months passed in a blur of agony and discipline. Month 3. The beach became his dojo. Jor-El was a merciless taskmaster. The training wasn't lifting weights. Weights were pointless. Izuku could lift a compact car with one hand now. Resistance training required creativity. They moved to the underwater training. Izuku walked into the ocean, deeper and deeper, until the pressure was crushing. "Hold your breath," Jor-El instructed. "Not for a minute." For 10. Izuku sat on the ocean floor, surrounded by darkness and silence. The water pressure pressed against his eardrums, but his body pushed back. His lungs burned, forcing his body to metabolize the solar energy stored in his cells instead of oxygen. He learned to process the energy efficiency. He learned to become a closed loop. Month 5, the sensory control became second nature. He could walk through a crowd without flinching. He could hold a glass of water without shattering it. But new powers were emerging. One evening, while meditating on a pile of tires, Izuku felt light. He opened his eyes. He was hovering 5 feet in the air. Whoa! He flailed, panic seizing him. The loss of focus broke the anti-gravity field, or whatever it was. Jor-El called it gravimetric manipulation. He fell. Crash. Flight is not propulsion, Jor-El lectured as Izuku dusted himself off. It is will. You reject the earth. You choose your own axis. Learning to fly was harder than walking. It was about believing, truly believing, that gravity was a suggestion, not a law. By the end of the month, Izuku could float in a lotus position for an hour. He didn't dare fly high yet. Sensors or military radar might pick him up, but he hovered inches off the ground while cleaning the beach, moving like a ghost. Month 7, the cardboard world mentality was tested. A runaway truck on the street near the park. Brakes failed. It was careening toward a pedestrian crossing. Izuku was there cleaning up litter. He saw it happening before the driver even screamed. Speed. The world stopped. The truck was frozen in time, suspended in a blur of motion. The people in the crosswalk were statues. Izuku moved. He didn't run, he blurred. He appeared in front of the truck. Don't punch it. You'll go through the engine block and kill the driver. Catch it. He planted his feet. He held out his hands. The truck hit him. Crunch. The metal of the bumper folded around his grip. The asphalt beneath his feet exploded, digging 2 long trenches as he slid backward. Smoke. Screaming tires. The truck stopped. Izuku stood there, steam rising from his shoulders. The truck's grill was crumpled against his chest. He wasn't even out of breath. The driver stared at him through the shattered windshield, mouth agape. Are you okay? Izuku asked. The driver fainted. Izuku fled before the police arrived. He heard the news later. Mystery vigilante stops truck with bare hands. He stared at his hands that night. He was strong. Too strong. Month 9. The beach was clear. The piles of garbage that had plagued the coast for years were gone. The sand was white and pristine. The sun set over a clear horizon. Izuku stood on the embankment, shirtless, sweating slightly. His body had changed. The baby fat was gone. He was lean, rippled with dense muscle that looked like it had been carved from marble. He wasn't bulky like All Might. He was compact. Aerodynamic. You have done well, Jor-El said. The voice was clearer now, almost like a real person standing next to him. I feel ready, Izuku said. Ready for what? To try. To apply to UA. To be a hero. You are powerful, Kal-El. But power is not heroism. Heroism is the choice of how to use that power. I know, Izuku said. He looked at the sun. It felt like a battery charger plugged into his chest. I'm going to save everyone. And I'm going to do it with a smile. The sludge villain incident. The day it happened, Izuku was feeling good. He had his control dialed in. He had his solar battery registry card in his wallet. He had his notebook. He was walking under the tunnel, taking a shortcut home. Gurgle. The sound came from the manhole cover. Izuku stopped. Fluid dynamics. Viscosity. Something heavy and wet. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. A voice hissed. The manhole cover exploded upward. A mass of dark green sludge surged out, forming a monstrous face with insane eyes. You'll do, kid! The sludge lunged. In the original timeline, Izuku froze. He panicked. He let the villain suffocate him for 45 seconds until All Might arrived. But this Izuku lived in a world of cardboard. And this villain was threatening to break his cardboard. Threat assessment, biological fluid. Suffocation hazard. Hostile. The sludge wrapped around him, forcing itself into his mouth and nose. Don't struggle. It'll only hurt for a minute. Izuku didn't panic. He held his breath. I can hold my breath for 3 hours, you idiot. He opened his eyes inside the sludge. The stinging fluid didn't bother his scara. He looked at the villain. He saw the fluid structure. He saw the solid eyes and teeth floating in the muck. Jor-El, do not use full strength. you will scatter him and potentially harm civilians with the hydrostatic shockwave. Izuku right? Heat vision? Jor-El, too risky in a confined space. Use rotational force. Izuku planted his feet on the concrete. He grabbed the fluid, using the tactile telekinesis field Jor-El had taught him about. It was the ability to extend his own biofield around an object to lift it without it breaking apart. He gripped the liquid as if it were solid. What? The villain gurgled. I can't move. Izuku pulled his hands apart. Get off. He spun. He moved at super speed, creating a centrifuge effect. Whoosh. The sludge was ripped away from his body by centrifugal force, plastered against the walls of the tunnel. Arg! The villain screamed as he was flattened into a disc against the concrete. Izuku stood in the center, dry and unbothered. Texas smash! A blast of wind pressure hit the tunnel entrance. All Might appeared, fist extended. The wind pressure hit the sludge, knocking it unconscious, or at least, disorienting it further. All Might stood there, his massive form filling the tunnel. He blinked. He looked at the villain, splattered against the walls. He looked at the boy, who was calmly wiping a speck of dirt off his shoulder. I am he. Oh. All Might paused. I see the situation is resolved? Izuku looked up. His heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but from fandom. All Might. Izuku beamed. Can I have your autograph? All Might laughed, a booming sound. Ha ha. Of course. You have a powerful quirk there, young man. A wind type? Or repulsion? Something like that. Izuku smiled nervously. All Might quickly gathered the sludge into soda bottles. Well, I must be off. Evil never sleeps, and neither do I. He leaped away. Izuku watched him go. He's injured, Izuku thought. With his enhanced vision, he had seen it. The scar on the hero's side. The missing lung. The way his skeleton seemed too small for his muscle form, as if he was puffing himself up like a balloon. He's dying, Izuku whispered. The realization hit him harder than a punch. The symbol of peace was made of cardboard too. The fire, later that afternoon. The Tatooine shopping district. Boom. Explosions. Smoke rising. Izuku was walking home, thinking about All Might's injury, when he heard it. Thump thump. Thump thump. A heartbeat he knew. Fast. Panicked. Terrified. Kaken. Izuku ran. He didn't use super speed, too many people. He ran at peak human athlete speed. He arrived at the scene. Flames were everywhere. The sludge villain had escaped. All Might must have dropped the bottle. And now, he had a new hostage. Bakugo. The heroes were useless. My wood quirk is weak to fire. I can't get close. We have to wait for someone with a suitable quirk. Izuku stood at the back of the crowd. He watched Bakugo struggling. The sludge was forcing itself down his throat. Bakugo's eyes were wide with terror. He was suffocating. Jor-El, do not intervene. The local authorities are handling it. Izuku, they aren't handling anything. They're watching him die. Jor-El, if you reveal yourself now, your life changes. You will be hunted. You will be feared. Izuku looked at Bakugo. He saw the tears in his eyes. He bullied me. He told me to kill myself. But he was a person. He was a cardboard person about to be torn apart. Izuku, I don't care. Izuku moved. He ducked under the police tape. Hey! Kid! Stop! Death Arms yelled. Izuku didn't stop. He sprinted toward the fire. The heat was intense for the humans. For Izuku, it was just warm. It felt nice. The fire fed him. He reached the villain. The sludge villain saw him. You again? I'll kill you this time. The villain swung a massive tentacle of sludge and fire. Izuku didn't dodge. He raised his left arm. Thwack. The tentacle hit his forearm and stopped dead. The concrete beneath Izuku's feet cracked, but Izuku didn't move an inch. The crowd gasped. He blocked it? Is that a defense quirk? Izuku looked at the sludge. His eyes began to glow. A faint red heat sizzled behind his lenses. Let him go. Die. The villain tried to engulf him. Izuku took a breath. Not fire. Wind. Super breath. He pursed his lips and blew. It wasn't a normal breath. It was a focused hurricane. Thum. The blast of compressed air cut through the fire like a knife. It hit the sludge villain's main body. The liquid rippled violently and was blown backward, detaching from Bakugo's face. Bakugo fell forward, gasping for air. Izuku caught him by the back of his uniform with one hand. He pulled Bakugo close. Deku? Bakugo coughed, smoke pouring from his mouth. I got you, Izuku said. The villain recovered, screaming in rage. He rose up, a towering wave of muck and flame. I'll kill you both. Izuku turned to face him. He shielded Bakugo with his body. He pulled his right fist back. He felt the solar energy coiled in his cells. Don't punch him. Just the air pressure. Smash! Izuku punched the air. The shockwave was visible. A cone of condensed atmosphere blasted outward. It hit the villain and atomized the upper half of the sludge, splashing it across every building within 50 meters. The fire was snuffed out instantly by the vacuum. The clouds above the street parted. It began to rain. Silence. Izuku stood amidst the steam, his fists still extended. His glasses had cracked from the pressure. He took them off, revealing eyes that glowed with a fading blue light. The heroes stared. The crowd stared. Bakugo stared. And from around the corner, a skinny, skeletal man with hollow eyes watched, his jaw on the floor. Izuku looked at his hand. He hadn't broken a bone. He wasn't tired. I didn't break the world, he thought, relief washing over him. I saved it. Jor-El's voice whispered in his ear, sounding almost proud. Welcome to the age of heroes, Kal-El. The rain was cold, but to Izuku, it felt like static on his skin. He stood in the center of the street, the asphalt cracked in a spiderweb pattern beneath his red sneakers. Steam rose from his shoulders, swirling into the gray, overcast sky he had created just moments ago with a single punch. The air smelled of ozone, burnt sewage, and the petrichor of a flash storm. The silence was absolute. Usually, after a villain attack, there is noise. Sirens screaming, the chatter of the crowd. But now, the crowd was paralyzed. They were staring at the boy who had parted a sea of flame with a breath and scattered a villain into atoms with the air pressure of a fist. Izuku slowly lowered his arm. His right sleeve was tattered, revealing the dense, corded muscle of his forearm. His knuckles weren't bruised. They weren't even red. He took a breath. Thump thump. Thump thump. The heartbeats of the crowd returned to his ears first, a rushing river of rhythm. Then the whispers. Did you see that? He changed the weather. Is that All Might's secret, kid? Scary, scary. The word pricked Izuku's ears sharper than a needle. He stiffened. He remembered Jor-El's warning. If you reveal yourself, you will be hunted. You will be feared. Young man! The shout came from Death Arms. The pro-hero, known for his super strength, stepped over the police tape. He looked angry, but as he got closer to Izuku, his steps faltered. Izuku turned to look at him. His glasses were gone, shattered in the blast. His green eyes were still faintly luminescent, the lingering photovoltaic energy fading back into his cells. Death Arms stopped 3 feet away. He was a large man, but looking at the teenager, he felt an instinctive, primal hesitation. It was the feeling a hiker gets when they stumble upon a tiger in the woods. You! Death Arms started, his voice losing its authoritative boom. You acted without a license. That was reckless. You could have killed the hostage with that kind of wind pressure. I calculated the angle, Izuku said. His voice was calm, unnervingly level. He pointed to his own eyes. I saw the gaps in the fluid. I knew exactly how much force to apply to separate the villain without harming the victim. Kaken, Bakugo, has bruised ribs from the constriction, and mild hypoxia, but he is otherwise unharmed. Death Arms blinked. You calculated? The villain is contained, Izuku continued, gesturing to the splatter patterns on the surrounding walls. He is unconscious but alive. The fires are out. The civilians are safe. Izuku bowed, a perfect, polite 45-degree angle. I apologize for the disruption. I will leave the cleanup to the professionals. He turned and walked away. Wait! Kid! Kamui shouted. The media. Izuku didn't wait. He bent his knees slightly. Don't fly, Jor-El's voice cautioned in his ear. Too public. Right. Just jump. Izuku pushed off the ground. Crack. The pavement shattered again. Izuku launched himself into the air, clearing the 3-story building in a single bound. He landed on the roof, rolled to dissipate the momentum, a habit from his human days, not strictly necessary now, and broke into a sprint. He moved faster than the news helicopters could track, a blur of green and black disappearing into the urban jungle of Yuzurifu. The aftermath. 10 minutes later, Izuku sat on the edge of a rooftop water tower, 5 miles away. He was trembling, not from exhaustion. He wasn't tired. He felt like he could run around the equator. He was trembling from the adrenaline of the choice he had made. I did it, he whispered, looking at his hands. I saved him. You exposed yourself. Jor-El's voice was dry, echoing in his cochlea via the comms link. Satellite imagery indicates thermal spikes in the district. The meteorological anomaly has been noted by the National Weather Service. You have rung the bell, Izuku. I couldn't let him die, Jor-El, Izuku said, clenching his fist. They were just watching him. The heroes, they were scared. They were worried about matchups. I couldn't just watch. There was a pause on the line. Then, the AI's voice softened, just a fraction. No. I suppose you could not. It is the paradox of our house. We possess the power to rule, yet we are compelled to serve. You did well to restrain the thermal output. Had you used your heat vision at that range, you would have boiled the boy's brain. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Izuku muttered. I am here. Izuku didn't jump. He had heard the man coming for the last 2 minutes. The heavy, booming impacts of his boots on the rooftops. The labored breathing. The rattling of a skeletal frame struggling to hold a muscular form. All Might landed on the roof, skidding to a halt. He posed, muscles glistening, smile wide. I am here, he repeated. To find the young hero who, PFFFFD. A cloud of steam exploded from the hero's body. The massive, golden age figure shriveled, hacking up blood. Izuku stood up and walked over. You really shouldn't push yourself, All Might-san. Your respiratory system is under severe strain. The skeletal man, Toshinori Yagi, wiped blood from his mouth. He looked at Izuku with sunken, shadowed eyes. You! All Might wheezed. You know, I have eyes that see a lot of things, Izuku said gently. He tapped his temple. I can see the scar tissue. The missing lung. The stomach that's barely there. You're running on fumes. All Might slumped against the railing. Well, that saves me the trouble of the secret identity speech. You're sharp, kid. The number 1 hero looked at the boy. He saw the tattered uniform, the calm stance, the underlying density of his presence. I saw what you did back there, All Might said, his tone turning serious. The wind pressure. The durability. The sludge villain hit you with enough force to crack concrete, and you didn't even flinch. My quirk is a stockpile type, Izuku recited his prepared lie. Solar battery. It enhances physical parameters. Solar battery. All Might mused. It looked familiar. The sheer brute force of it. It reminded me of myself. Izuku's heart hammered. I've always looked up to you, and yet, All Might said, looking at the sky, when I arrived, you didn't ask for fame. You didn't wait for the cameras. You saved the boy, ensured safety, and vanished. That is the essence of a true hero. All Might pushed himself up, standing tall even in his weakened form. Young man. What is your name? Midoriya Izuku. Midoriya Shonen, All Might said. I have been looking for a successor. Someone to inherit my will. For a long time, I thought I needed to find someone quirkless, someone with the heart of a hero, and give them power. Izuku held his breath. Was he going to offer? All Might looked at Izuku and shook his head slowly. But you do not need my power. Izuku felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. I don't? No, All Might smiled, a genuine, small smile. You are already overflowing. In fact, looking at you scares me a little. That punch, you held back, didn't you? Yes, Izuku admitted. If I hadn't, the street would be gone. All Might nodded grimly. That is the burden of the pillars, Midoriya. The world is fragile. We are still walking in a glass house. I see that burden in your eyes. You are afraid of breaking things. All Might walked closer and placed a skeletal hand on Izuku's shoulder. I cannot give you my power. It would be redundant, and perhaps even dangerous to mix with your own. But I can give you my experience. I can teach you how to be the symbol. How to hold back. How to smile when the weight of the world is on your shoulders. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. I am taking a teaching position at UA High next year, All Might said. If you aim for that school, I would like to help you prepare. Not as a master to a successor, but as a veteran to a rookie. What do you say? Izuku looked at the card. It was a direct line to the greatest hero on Earth. He didn't need one for all. He had the legacy of Krypton in his cells. But he needed a guide to navigate the human world. Jor-El could teach him physics and alien philosophy, but All Might could teach him what it meant to be a hero in Japan. Izuku bowed low. I would be honored, All Might Sensei. The rivalry reignited. Walking home was an exercise in stealth. Izuku stuck to the back alleys, avoiding the main streets where reporters were still prowling like sharks. As he turned the corner onto his street, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Deku. Izuku stopped. Katsuki Bakugo stood there. He looked rough. His uniform was stained with sludge, his eyes were red and puffy, and he was clutching his chest. Kaken, Izuku said, keeping his voice even. You should go to the hospital. Your oxygen saturation is low. Shut up, Bakugo rasped. He walked forward, his steps shaky. I didn't ask for your help. I didn't need you to save me. You looked like you needed saving, Izuku said simply. It was the same line he would have said in another life, but the delivery was different. There was no waver. No fear. Just a statement of fact. Bakugo gritted his teeth. How long? How long what? How long have you been laughing at me? Bakugo looked up, tears of frustration pricking his eyes. All these years. Quirkless Deku. Useless Deku. You let me push you around. You let me burn your notebook. And the whole time, you could have snapped me in half? Izuku looked at his friend. He realized how it must look. I wasn't laughing, Kaken, Izuku said softly. I didn't have this power back then. It woke up recently. The doctor called it a false negative. I didn't know. Bullshit. Bakugo yelled, explosions popping weakly in his palms. You tanked that explosion in class. You crushed the gripper. You've been hiding it. I was learning to control it, Izuku said. He took a step forward. Kaken, listen to me. I didn't fight back because if I did, I would have hurt you. Badly, Bakugo flinched. The admission hung in the air. You think you're better than me? Bakugo hissed. No, Izuku said. But I'm not beneath you anymore either. I'm applying to UA. I'm going to be a hero. Bakugo stared at him. For the first time in their lives, the dynamic had shifted. Bakugo wasn't the predator. He was the one looking up at the apex. Fine, Bakugo spat, turning around. Apply. But don't think this makes us even. I'm going to UA, and I'm going to prove that I'm still number one. I don't care what kind of freakish strength you have. I'll surpass you. I know you'll try, Izuku said. Bakugo stiffened, then stomped away into the night. Izuku watched him go. He could hear Bakugo's heart rate slowly calming down, though the anger remained hot in his veins. A volatile associate, Jor-El commented. He's driven, Izuku said. He pushes me. He keeps me grounded. Or he is a liability. Do not let his ego compromise your focus. The solar flare. That night, in the cave at Dagoba Beach, Izuku learned the cost of his interference. He stood in the center of the cavern, stripping off his ruined shirt. His skin was glowing. Not metaphorically. He was literally emitting a soft, golden light from his pores. I feel hot, Izuku murmured. Like I have a fever. You expended a massive amount of kinetic energy in a single burst, Jor-El explained, his hologram hovering over a console of hard light. The Texas Smash, as your hero calls it, created a pressure vacuum. To compensate for the sudden output, your cells drew in ambient solar radiation at an accelerated rate. You are currently overcharged. Overcharged? Think of a battery that is plugged into a high-voltage line. You are full. If you do not vent the excess energy, your internal temperature will rise until you undergo spontaneous combustion. Izuku's eyes widened. I'll explode? You will melt through the floor first. You must vent. How? The eyes are the path of least resistance. Focus the heat. Push it out. Izuku looked at a rusted engine block sitting in the corner of the cave, one of the last heavy scraps he hadn't moved. He focused. He felt the burning sensation in his chest, the humming in his blood. He pushed it up, into his neck, into his face, behind his eyes. His vision turned red. Zarak! 2 beams of intense red light erupted from his eyes. They weren't like the quick bursts he had used before. These were thick, continuous beams of concentrated thermal energy. The beams hit the engine block. There was no explosion. The metal simply turned white, then liquid. It slumped like wet clay, dripping onto the sand, turning into a puddle of molten steel in seconds. Izuku screamed, squeezing his eyes shut. He cut the connection. He dropped to his knees, panting. Smoke curled from his face. The air in the cave was superheated. Stabilization complete, Jor-El noted. Core temperature returning to normal levels. Izuku looked at the puddle of glowing metal. That is dangerous. It is a weapon, Jor-El corrected. And like any weapon, it requires safety protocols. You must learn to regulate your intake. You cannot simply drink the sun greedily. You must sip. Izuku nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Solar flare. That's what I'll call it. The venting process. A dramatic name, Jor-El said. But fitting. The long road to February. The next 10 months were a blur of duality. By day, Izuku was a student. He studied hero laws, history, and mathematics. Jor-El's cognitive enhancements made memorization trivial. Izuku could read a textbook in 3 minutes and retain 100% of the information. He finished the entire middle school curriculum in a week and spent the rest of the time studying college-level physics and engineering, trying to understand the drone's technology. By afternoon, he was with All Might. They met at Dagoba Beach Park, now a pristine stretch of sand. All Might didn't know about the cave or Jor-El. He thought Izuku had just cleaned the beach as part of his personal training. Impressive. All Might laughed, sitting on a bench in his skeletal form. You cleaned the entire coast. This place used to be a dump. It was good exercise, Izuku said, jogging in place. He was wearing weighted bands that Jor-El had synthesized. Bands made of a hyperdense polymer that weighed 2 tons each. To All Might, they looked like normal wrist weights. Now All Might said, we need to work on your soft touch. You have the power to smash, Midoriya. But a hero must also save. Catch this. All Might threw an egg. Izuku caught it. Splat. The egg crushed in his grip. Too hard. All Might chided. Again. He threw another. Splat. Again. It took 3,000 eggs. By month 4, Izuku could catch an egg thrown at baseball speeds without cracking the shell. By month 6, he could juggle 10 eggs while dodging All Might's attacks. By month 8, he could catch a falling leaf between 2 fingers without bruising the veins of the plant. Excellent, All Might beamed. You are learning to control your output. Remember, your power, it is 0 or 100. You need to find the numbers in between. Izuku smiled. He didn't have the heart to tell All Might that his 0 to 100 scale was actually logarithmic. While All Might trained his spirit and finesse, Jor-El trained his mind and senses. In the cave, Izuku practiced X-ray vision. He learned to peel back layers of reality. To see the skeleton under the skin, the gun under the jacket, the structural weakness in a bridge. He practiced hearing. He learned to track a specific heartbeat across the city. Find your mother, Jor-El would command. Izuku would close his eyes. Filtering, wind, traffic, dog barking. Mrs. Sato cooking curry. Mom, thump thump. Thump thump. She's at the supermarket. Aisle 4. Her heart rate is slightly elevated. She's worried about the price of fish. It was invasive. It was overwhelming. But it was necessary. The day of reckoning. February 26th. The UA entrance exam. Izuku stood in front of the massive H-shaped gates of UA High. The morning sun was bright, charging him with a low-level buzz of euphoria. He wore his black gakurin, now fitted tailored to accommodate his broader shoulders. He took a deep breath. This is it, Jor-El. You are prepared, the AI replied. Do not be arrogant. But do not be humble. You are the product of 2 worlds. Represent them well. Izuku walked forward. The crowd of examinees parted slightly around him. Maybe it was the confidence in his stride, or maybe it was a subconscious reaction to the bioelectric field he emitted. He saw Bakugo walking ahead. Bakugo ignored him, shoulders hunched, focused entirely on the kill. Izuku stepped onto the path. He was looking at the main building, marveling at the architecture, and scanning the rebar reinforcement with X-ray vision, when his foot caught on a slightly raised paving stone. Clumsy. Even with the powers of a god, Izuku Midoriya was still Izuku Midoriya. He tripped. He braced himself to catch his fall, which would have likely cracked the pavement. When he stopped in midair, he was floating. Whoa! He gasped. Did I fly? No, I didn't trigger the grav field. Are you okay? A cheerful voice. Izuku looked back. A girl with a round face and brown bobbed hair had touched his backpack. Her pinky finger was raised. It's my quirk, she smiled. Sorry for using it without asking. But it would be bad luck to fall right before the exam, right? She tapped her fingers together. Release. Gravity returned. Izuku landed softly on his feet. Analysis. Subject female. Approximate 15 years old. Quirk. Zero gravity. Mechanism. Appears to negate the graviton interaction of objects touched by the pads on her fingertips. Stress levels high, sweaty palms, dilated pupils. Heart rate, 110 bpm. Thanks, Izuku stammered, rubbing the back of his neck. That's a really cool quirk. Manipulation of mass or gravitons? The girl blinked, surprised by the sudden question. I think I just make things float. I'm Uraraka Ochako. Good luck. She waved and ran off toward the entrance. Izuku stood there, blinking. I talked to a girl. You exchanged 20 words, Jor-El noted dryly. Hardly a conversation. Proceed to the orientation hall. The written exam. The written exam was trivial. Izuku sat in the large lecture hall. The test was placed in front of him. English. Math. History. Hero law. Begin. Izuku flipped the page. His eyes scanned the paper. Question 1. Analyze the geopolitical impact of the quirk era on the United Nations Security Council. Question 2. Calculate the trajectory of a projectile. Izuku's hand moved in a blur. His pen scratched against the paper at a frequency that sounded like a zipper being pulled. Zip 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 zip. Jor-El's education drone had contained the collective knowledge of a civilization thousands of years more advanced than Earth. While Izuku didn't know everything, his processing speed was light years ahead. He finished the 3-hour exam in 20 minutes. He put his pen down. He looked around. Everyone else was sweating, chewing their pencils, erasing furiously. Izuku sighed. He closed his eyes and began to meditate, counting the heartbeats of the proctor, ectoplasm, to pass the time. The practical orientation. Everybody say hey. Present mixed voice boomed through the auditorium. Izuku winced, his hands instinctively going to his ears. Too loud. Level 8 volume. Dial it down. He adjusted his mental dampenings. The hero's voice became bearable. Welcome to the show. Today, you dig it, we're doing a 10-minute mock urban battle. Izuku listened as President Mike explained the rules. 3 types of robots. Points based on difficulty. Robots, Izuku thought. That makes it easier. I don't have to hold back as much as I would against humans. Excuse me. A tall boy with glasses and blue hair stood up in the middle of the auditorium. His hand was raised stiffly. I have a question. The handout clearly lists 4 types of villains, yet you only mentioned 3. If this is a misprint, it is a shameful error for a prestigious school like UA. The boy spun around and pointed a finger directly at Izuku. And you? The one with the curly hair. Izuku blinked, pointing at himself. Me? You've been muttering this entire time. Structural weakness of alloy, thermal melting points. It is distracting. If you are here on a field trip, please leave immediately. The auditorium went silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to Izuku. Izuku felt the old shame rising. The desire to shrink. To hide. But then he remembered. He was the last son of the House of L. He was All Might's student, sort of. He had stopped a runaway truck. He had punched the sky. He didn't shrink. Izuku stood up. The chair didn't scrape this time. I apologize if I disturbed you, Izuku said, his voice projecting clearly across the hall without shouting. I was analyzing the potential ally composition of the robots to determine the most efficient way to disable them without causing excessive collateral damage. He looked at the blue-haired boy, Tenya Ida. As for the fourth robot, Izuku gestured to the handout. If you read the fine print at the bottom of page 3, it states that Obstacle Type 0 is a non-combatant intended to test avoidance skills. It's a gimmick. A trap to waste time. Ida looked at his handout. He squinted. Page 3, he turned red. He bowed stiffly. I see. You read the entire pamphlet in the time it took to hand it out? I apologize for my rudeness. Ida sat down. President Mike whistled. Okay. Calm down, listeners. The examinee number 2234 is correct. The fourth robot is the zero-pointer. Avoid it at all costs. Izuku sat down. He felt Bakugo's gaze burning into the back of his head. Well handled, Jor-El said. I'm shaking, Izuku whispered back. Only internally. Externally, you were a statue. Battle Center B. The gates to Battle Center B were massive. A mock city sprawled out behind them, skyscrapers and streets replicating a dense urban environment. Izuku stood in the crowd of examinees. He saw Uraraka nearby, taking deep breaths, looking nervous. He started to walk toward her to wish her luck. Don't bother her. Ida appeared, blocking his path. She is attempting to focus. Are you trying to distract a rival? I was just going to wish her luck, Izuku said mildly. Start. President Mick's voice screamed from a watchtower. There's no countdown in a real battle. Run! Run! Die! The other students hesitated for a split second, confused. Izuku didn't. Boom! He launched. He didn't use full speed. That would shatter the windows of the observation deck. He used Category 1 speed. About 80 miles per hour. He was a green blur leaving the pack behind. He shot through the open gates and into the city. A one-pointer drone rolled out from an alley. Target acquired. Izuku didn't stop running. He didn't even slow down. He ran straight at it. At the last second, he dipped his shoulder. Shoulder check. He slammed into the robot's chassis. Crunch. The metal crumpled like tin foil. The robot was sent flying backward, embedding itself into a brick wall. 1 point, Izuku counted. He turned the corner. 3 two-pointers, Scorpion types. Heat vision? No. Too flashy. Save it. Super breath? Too much property damage. Fists. He leaped. He grabbed the tail of the first Scorpion. Tactile telekinesis engaged. He swung the robot like a flail. Smash. He slammed it into the second robot. Both exploded in a shower of sparks and oil. He threw the wreckage at the third one, crushing it. 7 points. He moved through the city like a force of nature. He wasn't frantic like the other students. He was efficient. Surgical. He saw a robot flanking a student with a laser navel. He intercepted the missile with his hand, crushing the warhead before it detonated. His hand felt a little tickle, and then flicked a piece of rubble through the robot's eye lens. 20 points. In the observation room, the teachers were watching the screens. Who is that kid? Snipe asked, adjusting his hat. He's moving like a pro. No flashy quirks, Midnight noted. Just pure physical stats. Is it a strength enhancer? Speed, strength, durability, Aizawa muttered, his eyes narrowing. He's not wasting any movement. He fights, logically. All Might sat in the back, grinning so hard it hurt. Go, young Midoriya. Show them the result of cleaning the beach. He has 45 points, Principal Niza noted, sipping his tea. Combat ability is confirmed. But what about the other criteria? Niza pressed a large red button. Rumble. The ground in Battle Center B began to shake. Buildings groaned. Dust rose in plumes. At the end of the main street, the pavement exploded upwards. A metallic hand the size of a bus gripped the tarmac. The 0-pointer rose. It was colossal. Taller than the skyscrapers. Its red eyes scanned the street. Destroy, it droned. The students screamed. That's the 0-pointer? Run! It's huge! The stampede began. Everyone turned and fled away from the monster. Izuku stood his ground. He looked up at the Titan. Size 50 meters. Weight, approximate 800 tons. Structural weak point, neck joints. Jor-El, avoidance is the objective. Do not engage. It is worth 0 points. I know, Izuku said. He turned to run. Oh wow! A cry of pain. Izuku's head snapped back. Super hearing locked on. In the dust cloud, near the foot of the robot, Uraraka was trapped. A piece of rubble had pinned her leg. She was struggling to lift it. The 0-pointer raised its massive foot. It was going to step right on her. Jor-El, you have passed. You have 50 points. Leaving is the logical. Izuku quiet. The cardboard world theory stated that Izuku had to be careful. He had to be gentle. But right now, the cardboard was about to be crushed. Izuku bent his knees. He didn't hold back. He dialed the knob to 10. One for all? No. This is the House of L. Boom. The street beneath him didn't just crack, it vaporized. A crater 10 feet wide appeared where he had been standing. He broke the sound barrier instantly. Boom boom. He appeared in front of the robot's face in 0.2 seconds. He was 50 meters in the air. He pulled his fist back. The solar energy surged through his arm, glowing through his jacket like molten gold. Smash! He punched the robot in the faceplate. There was no resistance. The metal face collapsed inward. The shockwave traveled through the robot's entire body. The neck snapped. The head was torn clean off the shoulders. The sheer kinetic force sent the 800-ton body toppling backward. Crash! The robot hit the ground, kicking up a dust cloud that covered 3 city blocks. Izuku hung in the air for a second, suspended by his momentum. Then, gravity remembered him. He began to fall. I can fly, he thought. I could just float down. But below him, Uraraka was watching. The other students were watching. If he flew, the questions would never stop. Improvise. He saw a piece of the robot falling near him. A flat plate. He grabbed it. He angled it to catch the air resistance. It wasn't perfect, but it slowed him down. Then, he aimed for the robot's fallen body. He punched the metal plating just before impact to create a cushion of air pressure. He landed on the scrap heap. He rolled. Safe, he exhaled. He looked over at Uraraka. She was freeing herself from the rubble, staring at him with wide, saucer-like eyes. Are you okay? Izuku called out. The buzzer sounded. Time's up. The exam was over. Izuku slumped onto the metal scrap. He looked at his fist. It was smoking. A spectacular display of inefficiency. Jor-El sighed in his ear. But effective. Izuku smiled. I saved her. Yes. You did. Recovery girl arrived shortly after, handing out gummies. She got to Izuku. Any injuries, Sonny? No, ma'am, Izuku said. She looked at him. She looked at the headless giant robot. She looked back at him. Right. Well, take a gummy anyway. Sugar is good for shock. Izuku took the gummy. As he walked out of the gate, he saw All Might watching from a window in the distance. The hero gave him a thumbs up. Izuku returned it. He had flared. He had burned bright. And he hadn't broken. Next stop, UA High. The dust of Battle Center B was still settling, hanging in the air like a thick, gritty fog. The silence that followed the destruction of the 0-pointer was heavy, broken only by the distant wail of sirens and the stunned murmurs of the examinees who were slowly creeping back from their hiding spots. Izuku Midoriya sat on a slab of twisted metal that had once been the robot's shoulder plating. He was staring at his hands. They weren't shaking. In his mind, he replayed the sensation of the punch. It hadn't felt like hitting metal. It had felt like hitting wet clay. The feedback loop from his nervous system was confusing. His brain expected resistance, pain, the jarring shock of impact. But his biology, the dense, solar-charged lattice of his Kryptonian enhanced cells, had absorbed the kinetic energy and redistributed it instantly. Heart rate stabilizing, Jor-El's voice was a cool stream of data in his right ear. Adrenal gland output reducing. You generated a force equivalent to 4.5 kilotons of TNT. Efficiency rating, 12%. You wasted a significant amount of energy on the shockwave. I panicked, Izuku whispered, keeping his head down so the other students wouldn't see him talking to himself. It was bigger than I thought. You must calibrate your perception of big, the AI corrected. To an ant, a lawnmower is a god. To you, That robot was merely a toy. You broke it because you treated it like a threat, rather than an obstacle. Hey! You! Izuku looked up. A short, elderly woman in a lab coat and a syringe-shaped helmet was hobbling over the debris field. It was Recovery Girl, the backbone of UA's heroics department. Are you hurt, Sonny? She asked, her eyes scanning him with professional sharpness. That was a nasty fall you took after you decapitated a skyscraper. I'm fine, ma'am, Izuku said, standing up. He dusted off his trousers. They were torn at the knees, and his Gakurin jacket was missing a sleeve, but beneath the fabric, his skin was unblemished. Nonsense, Recovery Girl huffed. You fell from 50 meters. Even with a strength enhancer, the deceleration trauma creates microfractures. Come here. She reached out, puckering her lips. Kiss. She planted a wet smooch on Izuku's forearm. Usually, Recovery Girl's quirk, heal, worked by accelerating the recipient's natural healing factor. It utilized the body's own stamina reserves to stitch wounds and knit bones in seconds. It was a transfer of life force. Nothing happened. Recovery Girl pulled back, blinking. She looked at Izuku, then at her own hand, then back at him. That's odd, she muttered. Is something wrong? Izuku asked, panic spiking. Did she figure it out? My quirk, she frowned, tapping her chin. It didn't activate. Usually, even if you feel fine, there's always something to fix. A bruised capillary, a strained ligament. But, it's like trying to water a rock. Your cells didn't respond. She grabbed his arm again, squeezing. Her fingers, strong despite her age, pressed into his bicep. Hard, she noted. Like steel wrapped in warm velvet. And your skin temperature, you're running at nearly 40 degrees Celsius. Do you have a fever? It's my quirk. Izuku blurted out, the lie springing to his lips rehearsed 1,000 times. Solar battery. I metabolize sunlight. I run hot when I'm fully charged. And my body is naturally dense to hold the energy. Recovery Girl peered at him over her visor. Her eyes were shrewd. She had seen thousands of quirks in her tenure. Accumulation types, mutation types, emitter types. Solar battery, she repeated. I've seen sun-based quirks before. Usually, they allow for projection or photosynthesis. But this durability is consistent with extreme mutation types. Yet you look like a normal boy. She pulled out a scanner and ran it over his chest. The device beeped once, then emitted a long, confused whine. Error. Bone density exceeds calibration. Error. Unknown radiation signature. She grunted, smacking the device. Piece of junk. Well, if you aren't hurt, you aren't hurt. But take these gummies. Your blood sugar might crash after an output like that. She handed him a packet of candy and moved on to Uraraka, who was nursing a scraped leg. Izuku exhaled the breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The air pressure from his side kicked up a small cloud of dust at his feet. That was close, Jor-El observed. Her ability attempts to manipulate biological time. Your cells, however, are effectively immortal under yellow sun radiation. They exist in a state of constant, perfect regeneration. She cannot accelerate what is already instantaneous. I need to be more careful, Izuku muttered, watching Uraraka float away with the nurse. If they do a blood test, they'll see the triple helix structure. They'll know I'm not human. Then do not give them a reason to bleed you, Jor-El replied. The long week. The week following the exam was a torture of a different kind. Physical pain, Izuku could handle. He could dip his hand in boiling water and feel only a pleasant warmth. He could hold his breath until his lungs burned and find clarity in the deprivation. But anxiety? Anxiety was a human flaw, and it seemed his Kryptonian upgrades had done nothing to cure it. If anything, his superhearing made it worse. He sat at the dinner table, staring at a piece of katsudon. Thump 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 thump. He could hear his mother pacing in the living room. He could hear her muttering to the shrine of her late husband. Please let him pass. Please let him be okay. He broke a robot. Oh dear, did they charge us for the robot? We can't afford a giant robot. Izuku winced. He wanted to tell her it was fine. He wanted to tell her that he had crushed the practical exam. But the written exam, he had finished it in 20 minutes. That scared him. Had he rushed? Had he misread the questions? Jor-El assured him he had scored 100%, but Jor-El was an alien AI who thought quantum mechanics was light reading for toddlers. What if the essay portion on hero ethics required a human touch, and Izuku had written a logical dissertation on the efficiency of saving lives that sounded like a robot wrote it? Izuku? Inko Midoriya stood in the doorway. She looked smaller these days. Or maybe Izuku was just getting bigger. He was growing, not just muscle, but height. He had gained 3 centimeters in the last month alone. The mail came, she said, her voice trembling. She held out a white envelope. The Yui seal was stamped in red wax on the back. Izuku stood up. The chair didn't scrape. He had learned to levitate it slightly when he moved to avoid damaging the floor. Thanks, Mom. He took the envelope. It felt light. I'll go to my room. He walked down the hallway, the envelope feeling heavy in his hands despite its weightlessness. He entered his room. The door had been reinforced with steel plating after the sneeze incident of last month, and sat at his desk. Okay, he whispered. Do or die. He tore the envelope open. A small metal disc slid out and clattered onto the desk. Click. A hologram projected into the air.